Welcome. Today in Ukraine, we are 30 kilometers from the Russians. I'm in an M109 from the 37th Marine Brigade. Here, they're going to show us how it works, the M109. This American artillery piece, received in large numbers, is prized for its ruggedness. In use for over 50 years, it continues to be modernized. It moves easily, especially now in early November with mud and Rasputitsa. Since it has tracks, we'll take a quick tour. So, we're inside the M109, a widely used artillery piece with over 10,000 produced mainly in the United States. Italy had them, Spain, Norway, Saudi Arabia, so there are really a lot of countries that have them, and Italy supplied a lot of them. Ukrainians got over 100. The M109 is a self-propelled artillery piece, able to move thanks to its tracks, which is its main advantage. That means that in the famous periods when there is a lot of rain and mud everywhere, well, they can keep moving, which means they'll be able to get closer to the front if necessary. Whereas a cannon mounted on a truck, like the Caesar for example, is certainly much more mobile, but it will be much more limited in its ability to move, staying mostly on the roads. Each piece has pros and cons. The Caesar cannon's main advantage is its lighter weight and wheels, making it much more mobile. This is an advantage in wars without drones, allowing faster movement against counter-battery fire. This one too, back during the Iraq War, for example, the Americans called it the Hammer of Thor, because it has very significant firepower and it's able to move to relocate before they can launch a counter-battery attack. Even though at that time, obviously, it wasn't really high-intensity warfare like what we can have against the Russians. And so here they're realizing that the Caesar's real advantage isn't mobility, as people used to say. In 2022 and 2023, Ukrainians still prefer this gun. We still have to say it today, but tracks in the current season are still a big advantage. And the Caesar outperforms everyone because it shoots up to 40 kilometers here. We're going to shoot up to 18 kilometers with precision. If we go further, we'll lose accuracy. Otherwise, you need shells with rear boosters, which are extremely rare. So the Caesar's ability to shoot farther means that we stay safe. We're out of range of drones, including fiber optic drones. But logically, we still have much higher survivability with the Caesar, and that's clear in the statistics. When you look at what we find in open source intelligence, the number of Caesars supplied versus those destroyed, as shown by the Russians. The survival rate is much higher than that of other towed artillery pieces, especially for the M109, the second most supplied cannon to Ukrainians. They prefer the Caesar, they say it, they want more of the same new blood, and so do the Ukrainians, by the way. That's why they've heavily developed their own artillery with the 2S-22. Bogdana has a cannon with a range similar to the Caesar, but lacks advanced electronics and is slightly less accurate. But in terms of range, it's also a cannon they like a lot and are producing in very, very large quantities. Now, the M109 is a piece that weighs 25 tons, so it's fully armored, which also explains its weight and lower mobility. But the advantage, of course, is that we're working in a very, very large environment. I'll refer you to the video where I showed the 2S1. We're dealing with these Soviet systems. That's a 120 mm as I have the 2S1, but it's much smaller. Here we have a lot more space and several operators will work together. The first one is here. He's the one who will handle everything related to targeting. Then here you have the loader. That means there will be two of them. There's one here who will work to load the shells inside, and there's a second one outside. They'll work like this in a chain, passing the shells to each other, so they can keep up with an organization that's still fairly optimal. They'll then put the shell inside and they'll insert a kind of small pin directly at the back of the shell. And they'll all move back about 15 meters and pull the cord. That's what sets off the shot in terms of organization. They usually don't know exactly what they're shooting at. They're often given a phi and G position or a distance and azimuth, then they fire. Drone observers provide real-time feedback on success and needed corrections. After finishing their mission, it wasn't as I thought, or as we learned in 2022 or 2023. They were still here, aiming to escape quickly, thinking that we're going to face counter-battery fire, but today, counter-battery fire isn't the main risk. and so escaping, thinking that we'll manage to get beyond the counter-battery fire, which is no longer a guarantee of safety. In fact, it's better to try to hide a bit more than 20 kilometers from the front, since the shots are fired from between 7 and 18 kilometers away. If there's an alert, we're under 30 kilometers from the Russians, close enough for drones but out of artillery range, which is good. And so, if there were ever an attack there, and if it was identified by the Ukrainian high-altitude NFX drones, we would know. About 20 kilometers before the Russians reach the front line, the Ukrainians prepare, get into position, and move closer. 10 kilometers, 10 kilometers. They will try to strike deep into Russian territory. That means they'll already start hitting the artillery, the equipment, the armored vehicles, and so on. Those trying to launch assaults, they'll start hitting them. 5-10 kilometers behind the lines, gradually advancing to the front, knowing that in the last few kilometers, tanks can strike up to 7 kilometers, not in direct fire, but more like artillery. And you have first-person view kamikaze drones, mining, a lot of things that can be used. So for him, in terms of what he can use, there are 155 mm shells, which are the largest and standard type we have, both classic and in various categories. Either they will have the ability to fire explosive shells, so logically it hits on impact and explodes, or they have shells with intelligence. You know about Excalibur and bonus shells. They can identify a target near the impact zone and release tungsten balls. It's no joke, they exist but have never been used, mainly because this rare ammo costs over 60,000 euros. A regular shell costs about 4,000 and is easier to make since it lacks electronics that can survive 40,000 G. Then you have smoke shells, and those are more or less so the Russians get confused and don't know exactly where it is. And there are shells with submunitions or mines. That means they'll be able to launch them on an approach axis. The Russians think the area is cleared of mines, but since they have them, they'll be able to put mines on the Russians' lines of advance. Once again, because the roads are muddy at this time of year, it's early November, there really aren't that many of them, so we know where the Russians will come from. Since we have advance warning, which is very helpful for how the drones are used, here when you want to turn, so right or left, that's the hydraulic system obviously at the bottom, so of course it's controlled to the tiniest fraction of a degree. And there's also the system here you see all around us, the system that will rotate, so it turns all the way around. Here at the back, there are a few extra shells, so the stockpile. They often move to locations with supplies ready, allowing them to reach prepared artillery positions. They move less with shells and reach positions where shells are already waiting, since the positions are often the same. Once again, hidden, armored, secure, secured. Rather than having a lot of ability to move quickly, that's still a big advantage. So, in theory, here, on the right side of the cannon, here you have a targeting mode, so right now it's off, but you have the option to fire in direct mode. That means if we ever got within 2, 1 and 7/8 miles of the Russians, we could look directly and fire flat shots. It's not made for that, but we can use it in tank mode. It's a little tank as well. Traditional ones are still used by our armies, while Ukrainians use more tablet-like systems. You already discussed the Kropyva app, which I also showed in the video in the Caesar, usually Kropyva. Today, it's still the basis for identifying, designating, and targeting. Next, the secret passage. Careful, hold on, it's over there, you see here, and there you go, that's the pilot's seat. So he has his entrance from the other side. And there you go, when we move. The driver, our driver friend, he has this, you see here. When he's driving, this is open. That's his access. He can still communicate with the friends who are in the back. Whether we're here in the back or up front, the biggest risk remains the first-person view kamikaze drone, even more than artillery or counter-battery fire. And the big advantage is that they have a very sophisticated Russian detection system called Viraj. And when a drone approaches within a few dozen kilometers, they know about it. That means you have to hide, you have to stop taking care of the tank. They can't go out to shoot while waiting for that drone to leave or be shot down. By launching a Ukrainian first-person view drone that will collide with that observation drone, for example an Orlandis. But there is an ability to know what's happening in front. And so sometimes they've even seen kamikaze drones here, Russian Lancets, which are basically small planes that are relatively effective, that can go like that, 300, 4,050 kilometer. They saw Lancets flying overhead to strike targets behind them identified by the Russians. Maybe fixed positions, but they're here and they stay for several days, even several weeks. Well, it's this ability to know when the Russians are watching that means they haven't been identified or detected yet. And if that were the case, the Russians would obviously launch kamikaze drones, including fiber optic ones or Lancets, and also glide bombs. But the bombs come with a warning, since they will glide for several minutes or even several tens of minutes. And once they know there are Russians, that there are drones and glide bombs or drones that are on their way, they leave their position. Actually, they leave the vehicle to go hide behind it, because the best protection for the vehicle is not having any activity around it. They keep it cold, covered, protected, and keep men away. Clearly, Ukrainians still prioritize human life before the morning itself. Knowing that anyway, given the protections and how it's hidden around us, I couldn't really show it to you, but you can still see it. With the footage I filmed at night among the branches, we couldn't see the sky. It's still impressive. It's well done, because even when we work here, no light or heat comes through, even if we start the engine. Friends, I hope you enjoyed this video. Clearly the techniques are evolving. Even advice from late 2023 and early 2024 is now outdated for using artillery. The speed of adaptation to this terrain is impressive. And of course, follow the Ukrainians. They truly know how to handle high-intensity war with the Russians. See you soon.